This is called the Deutz Gambit, where you sacrifice your pawn on d4 after black plays knight f6, like this. This is one gambit that brought me back to chess, that made me fall in love with chess again. There was a time when I almost quitted chess because nothing was working, and by then I just got a degree in economics and got employed by a commercial bank in my country. So I thought, why should I even bother? After all, chess is so hard. And everything seemed to be boring. Same openings, same strategies. I mean, no traps, no fast way of winning. And so I came across this opening, which is the Deutz Gambit, that inspired me to get back on the board. And so I want to share with you some of the top secrets that made me become a better chess player in the Deutz Gambit. So this video will consist of both new and some old clips that you might have missed. More like a collection of some new and old video clips for the Deutz Gambit. Let's see how this goes. This is the Deutz Gambit, and this is not the right move due to knight takes e5 and bishop e3. This is just a pin, so I'm pinning the knight to the bishop. The most common move is knight e6 in this position, after which I'm just going to take with my bishop. These are basic principles. Yeah, if pawn to d6, I can still take. No, first of all, I take here, like the killer. I'm going to win the rook at worst. So I'm just up an exchange, and my opponent resigned. Yet their username is Gambit 201. So who is the Gambit master in this case? I guess it is moi. Now, the opening trap that you saw in the game that I just finished playing arises from this line: e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5, castle shot, knight f6, attacking the pawn on e4, and boom, back to the Deutz Gambit, d4. What my opponent played was knight takes d4, which is not a good move. There's only one good move in this position, which is bishop takes. So black has to accept giving up their bishop pair. But most people don't like that idea, which my opponent proved by taking with a knight. Immediately this happened, I remembered to go bishop e3. But the main line begins with knight takes e5. You need to attack the pawn on f7 first. You see, the best black can do is to play knight e6 in this position or queen e7, but that doesn't even help much. If black castles short, now this is where you pin their knight to the bishop. One piece has to die in this position. If they play pawn to d6, this is where you remember to sacrifice on f7. It's a common trap in the Deutz Gambit. And after rook takes, you don't mind giving up two pieces in this manner because you know on the next move you're going to take on d4. At the end of the day, you'll just be up an exchange. Now, after knight takes e5, speaking of knight e6, the best you can do here is just to take bishop takes e6, and they mostly take back with their f pawn since they don't want to lose their right to castle, so they won't take with the d pawn. From here, white's position is better. You're way ahead in development, and you can play rook e1 or queen e2 to hold on to that pawn if you want. But there's this other tricky move, knight d3, which I highly recommend you should play. Most of your opponents will think the pawn on e4 is free since you can't even take their bishop, but oops, there comes queen h5 check. After pawn to g6, you have queen e5, which attacks the rook and also threatens to capture this. Say rook f8, because what else can they do? And now you have an option to take on c5 or on e4. Knight takes c5 looks scary due to pawn to d6, but you have queen takes e4. You see, the same knight e6 line may happen even after black castles short. And let's say you go bishop e3, pinning the knight to the bishop. Black can still play knight e6. Just for you to know, you can still take on e6 with the bishop. Bishop takes. This should be the main line. The point is, if black takes with the f pawn, now you have bishop takes that attacks the rook. If pawn to d6, you simply play bishop a3, knowing full and well that on the next move you are going to walk away with a rook. So you're going to be up an exchange. If black plays something else other than f takes, I mean after you take their knight on e6, say bishop takes an intermediate move, you can just go ahead and take on f7. This is what you want to do, and after that you can even go knight takes f7, that attacks the queen. Even if they do this, it doesn't help. On the next move you're just going to win the knight. For example, king takes and e5. You see, there are so many things that you can do as white. From here, bishop takes. Of course, black doesn't have to take back. They just have to play king h8, allowing you to take on e3 and then play pawn to d6. But the best you can do here is to go knight g6. Let your piece die with dignity so that after pawn takes, you go bishop takes. And that's it. Maybe it's just a matter of time before checkmating black like that. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5, castle shot, knight f6, attacking the pawn on e4, and boom, back to the Deutz Gambit. Now in this position, there are 3 pieces that can take our pawn on d4, out of which only one is the correct response. And this is the line where you can force black to give up his bishop pair very early in the opening. I remember covering this line in my last video on how to take advantage of the weak f7 and f2 pawns. Here, if black takes with the wrong piece, for example, pawn takes on d4, we are going to play e5, attacking the knight on f6. And in this position, there are only 5 responses that black can play, out of which only one is the best response. And that's what we want to see, because we love seeing best responses. So instead of black retreating his knight in this position, black plays pawn to d5, attacking our bishop on c4. Here we are not going to take the pawn on d5 with %. Instead, I recommend that you take the knight on f6. If black takes our bishop on c4, we go rook e1 check, bishop e6 is forced. And in this position, I want you to remember this, very important. Do not take the pawn on g7 because you will activate rook g8, indirectly eyeballing your g2 square. So instead of taking the pawn on g7, I recommend that you go knight g5, attacking the bishop on e6. Now in this position, most advanced players have tried the move queen to d5. Well, the problem with queen to d5 is that this move forces the black queen to come out so early in the opening, which isn't what black was prepared for. For example, after queen to d5, we may go knight c3, attacking the queen on d5. And note that black cannot take our knight on c3 because we are going to take the free queen, since the bishop on e6 is pinned to the king by our rook. Which is why after knight g5 attacking the bishop on e6, you won't see many of your opponents responding with a move queen to d5. Instead, they will go queen takes on f6. The problem again with this move is that black loses immediately to knight takes on e6. Note that the queen cannot take on e6 because there is a rook. F takes on e6 is forced, after which we are going to play queen h5 check, forking the king and the bishop this time. Now here I should mention that there is no any real way of protecting the bishop on c5. And believe it or not, I had this same position in a classical match where my opponent surprised me with a move queen to g6, blocking the check, forgetting that I can still go rook takes on e6 with check. So after king d7, I captured the queen on g6, h takes on g6, and again I took the bishop on c5. And that's how black lost the game in this position. So when I'm showing you these traps, it's not that I'm just making these things up. I have real life experiences and they do work 100%. By the way, before I play the next set of games featuring the Deutz Gambit, let me know where you're watching this video from. As for myself, I'm right here in the city of Lusaka, Zambia. It's a wonderful afternoon here in the city of Lusaka, Zambia. For those of you who don't know where Zambia is, for God's sake, it's in Africa. Just a quick geography lesson for you guys. Africa is a continent on its own with 54 independent countries, and Zambia is in South Central Africa or Southern Africa, which shares the mighty Victoria Falls with Zimbabwe. Africa is not a country, it is a continent that has 54 fully recognized sovereign states, including Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Angola, Kenya, Ethiopia, etc. Just like the continent of North America, which has 23 independent countries. Anyway, just wanted to share with you a little bit of some geography before getting into the King's Pawn game. Alright, there we go. Pawn to e5. Let me start with the bishop's opening. Knight f6. So you know what, whenever I see this move, I always think of the Boden Kitserisky, which is basically the reversed Stafford Gambit, where we sacrifice the pawn on e4. So that's what I want to do. If black won't take my pawn, I'll transpose this game into the Vienna hybrid, you know, Vienna Gambit hybrid, something like that, Stanley variation. So let me go knight f3, sacrificing my pawn. I want black to take that. I can go knight c3. Okay, so most people don't even take, because I mean I intended to play knight c3, turn this into some kind of the reversed Stafford Gambit. That is so dangerous, you guys. Okay, now whenever I reach this position, I always think of the Deuce Gambit. So I'm intending to castle short. I'm planning to castle short. If black plays bishop c5, I will play d4. That's the Deuce Gambit. So let's do that. Great. So bishop c5, now I can safely play pawn to d4. So with the Deuce Gambit, we first of all delay the development of the queen's knight, and instead play pawn to d4. In this position, the right move for black is bishop takes. That's the only correct move. If they take with the pawn, I'll go pawn to e5 and go on to win the game quickly. Even knight takes fails due to, can you spot it? I give you, let's say, 5 seconds or 10. Okay, so if that happens after knight takes d4, you ought to play knight takes e5. The idea is to take on f7. Yep. So now let's pin the knight to the bishop like this. This knight can't move because I'm going to win the bishop. Maybe they can do this, but okay, so let me tell you what happens after knight e6. If black played knight e6, I was going to take that knight, and after bishop takes e3, what I was going to do was to take with my bishop on f7 with check. If rook takes, I was going to take with my knight, threatening to capture the queen before take anyway. So black played pawn to d6. I think this is just a free piece now, if you think about it. Because if pawn takes, I'll take the bishop. Maybe black is going to take this. I mean, I'm just up a piece, I guess. Oh, am I? Oh yeah. I'm not going to be up a piece, but at least I'm going to be up an exchange. If you calculate the moves here, I can take on f7, threatening to take the queen. So I'm going to be up an exchange if rook takes. Besides, I have this. Once again, this is called the Deuce Gambit. A must-know opening. So now I can safely take. I'm just up an exchange now. and then take the bishop. So you can see right in the opening stage on move 11, the game is technically over. I mean, I've already won half the battle. And this is one good thing I love about these, e4 openings, such as the Vienna, Stanley Variation, Vienna Hybrid, Vienna Game, King's Gambit, Italian Game. They are just too open in nature. So now I can do whatever I want. Activate my rooks, or just play something else, or perhaps pawn to f4. So you see, this is now the middle game where you are required to come up with a plan, a clear winning plan. There are so many things you can do, but among many things, just choose one, plan that you understand best. I want to play pawn to e5, but another mind is telling me to develop my a rook since it is out of the game. Let's do that. And it's just good to do this. I mean, just put all your pieces together. Now I can play pawn to e5. It makes sense. I'll take with my other pawn. Let me pre-move that. So I have two open files for my rooks. This is how you want to play chess, you guys. How do you expect me to lose like this? Once again, I have plenty of options to take. Here I can play knight d5 if I want, attacking the queen. If bishop takes, I have queen takes, win the rook. In fact, let me do this. Knight d5, attacking the queen. Sometimes you need to learn how to oversimplify your games. That's the most important thing in chess. We call it the KISS concept. KISS. Keep it so simple, or keep it stupid simple, as some people say. There's a checkmate threat on h2. I need to stop that. I'm also pinning the knight to the queen. So this is bad news for my opponent. Queen h4 was a very bad move, and if you have noticed, my opponent is playing so fast, which is a major sign that they are not even thinking while I'm thinking. Oversimplification. Check. We give a check. I want to do something very funny, you guys. I want to end this game in style. So what I'm going to do is to take the knight. I want to sacrifice my queen after bishop takes. Okay. So what I wanted to do is, if my opponent took with the bishop, I was going to take, and then after queen takes, mate them like that. That was going to be checkmate. Perhaps, maybe that's why they have played. What have they done? h5. Nevertheless, I have this other cool tactic, you guys. Look what I'm going to do to my opponent's nose. So I just want to give a check. Check. Knew I was getting back my piece. This is game over, but my opponent doesn't just want to resign. Okay, good. Oh. Okay, now let me play the reversed Stafford Gambit by sacrificing my e-pawn. I guess my opponent won't take on e4. Most people play knight c6 in this position. If black took my pawn on e4, I was going to be very happy. So now I can transpose this to, some kind of the Deutz Gambit, where I just cast a shot, still giving up my e-pawn, as you can see. Yeah, so they mostly play bishop c5, because even at this point, they don't know, what the heck I'm doing with this, sacrifice. So after this, you're supposed to play pawn to d4 right away, and the correct move black should play is bishop takes, not knight takes or pawn takes. If pawn takes, I will play pawn to e5. Yep, so my opponent clearly knows what they are doing, so now I'm supposed to take pap. After knight takes, I can play bishop g5, I guess, if I want, and then go pawn to f4. I'll start with f4 first. Bishop g5. So this is the simplest thing you can do in the Deutz Gambit. Pawn to d6 now, f4, immediately. Queen e7, I've never seen this before. I can play pawn to f5 if I want, or taking on e5. After all, that's what you're supposed to do. Let me just take to open up the line. When you do this, be careful of queen c5 check. In the near future, you might lose your light squared bishop, which is why it's always advisable to play knight a3 in these kinds of lines, or should I say in the Deutz Gambit. a6, let's mess up the king side. Probably go queen h5. I'm just improvising now, trying to be relevant in society. And this is why we play knight a3, so that we don't even have to move the light squared bishop. Now I can just play pawn to c3, maybe questioning black's knight on d4. So bishop takes, knight takes, what else? Then knight e6, look at this pap. Now I want to position my knight on the most active square, a beautiful square. Oh, I'll play knight d5 and then take the poor pawn on f6. Especially if black plays something like rook d8, that won't make sense. So it's all about piece activity when it comes to the Deutz Gambit. Can I sacrifice my rook? No, I think that won't be great. Let me do this. That wasn't going to be a reasonable sacrifice. Uh-oh. I didn't see that coming. Okay. Rook a e1. And I'm running low on time, for God's sake. This guy is so dangerous. Let's take. They seem to know what they are doing. I want to sidestep. Oh, wait a second. Don't they have this? Oh, still I have king h1, so rook takes, yep. Rook takes is not much of a stretch. I can do this now. And pinning my knight technically. Also attacking the rook. So rook back to g8. Rook g8. Now I can go in with my pap. Knight f5. I don't know what I'm doing, but I have intentions of, giving a check, doing this. Should mention to say I'm playing against a 20. Wait a second. That's not a good move. How about this? Queen back to f8. Now check. And then exchange material. Still not clear what I want to do. Maybe I'll just take oversimplifying things. Let's do that. Give a check. To give a check here. Yep. I mean, very low on time, so I need to blitz out every move. Let's do this. Yeah, get rid of the rook. Check. Pop. Defend that. Let's do that. Ah, okay. I managed to remove all the moves.